I still remember sitting in my office, feeling frustrated, watching people around me get promoted. And what did I do? I kept waiting for someone to notice my hard work, waiting for someone to recognize my leadership. I thought if I just kept my head down, worked harder, and did my best, it would happen. But it didn't. And that moment when I realized that no one was coming to rescue my career, that was a turning point for me. And if that sounds familiar, if you ever felt like you're doing everything right, but still being overlooked for promotions, you are not alone. And this episode is going to change the way you think about your career growth. So hi everyone, I'm Limor Bergman-Gross, and you are at From a Woman to a Leader podcast. And this podcast is dedicated for you, women in tech or women in male-dominant fields. We have real, no BS conversations about what it actually takes for women to step into leadership, especially in tech where I come from. So if you don't know me or don't know this podcast, first of all, I want to welcome you and thank you for being here with me today. My name is Limor Bergman-Gross, as I mentioned, and I've spent over 20 years in tech. I started my career as an engineer and grew into leadership positions while building a family. I have 4 children and moving countries. And this podcast is dedicated for all women out there because we want to inspire and support you in your career. And trust me, today's conversation is one that every woman in the workplace needs to hear. And my guest today is Tabatha Jones. She is a career coach and a former corporate leader. And she, for 10 years, stays stuck in the same role despite leading teams, taking on more responsibilities, and even earning a degree while working full-time. It wasn't until a painfully low job offer forced her to realize just how much she had been undervaluing herself that everything changed. Does it sound familiar? You know, sometimes we have to hit a low point to realize that something has to change. What did she do next? It was game-changing. She turned down that offer. She walked into a higher-level conversation, and she negotiated a 15% raise and a senior title on the spot. And that was the moment she decided to take control of her career. And since then, she helped countless women do the same. And in this episode, I'm very excited because this is part of my mission. We are breaking down why hard work alone isn't enough to get promoted, the biggest mistakes women make when it comes to self-advocacy, how to confidently ask for what you deserve in salary negotiations, and how to make sure you are seen as the obvious choice for leadership roles. I wish I heard this episode 20 years ago. I'll be honest with you. If you ever hesitated to take credit for your work, if you struggled with self-promotion, or you felt like, or maybe you still feel, like you are waiting for permission to level up, I'm telling you, this episode is for you. Before you do anything else today, hit play. Or just continue listening to us today, because what you'll hear in the next 30 minutes or so, it might be just the push that you need to finally claim the career that you deserve. Are you ready? Let's dive right in. Hi, Tabatha. How are you?
I'm good. How are you today, Limor?
I'm pretty good. It's a pleasure having you today. And I'm super excited because we're going to talk about things that I think are not talked enough about, how to get promoted, how to advocate for yourself, which I'm super excited.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait. There's so many great things we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely. And before we go there, I want to ask you about your own journey and kind of you're willing to share. When was the time that you kind of felt that you needed to, to do something in order to get promoted. That just doing your work wasn't enough.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I come from a technical background in the telecom world, and I had been in a project manager role for a really long time. So title was project manager. My job responsibilities that I accumulated included running very large technical projects. I was leading 3 teams of people who did completely different bodies of work. I was working on my degree. I kept thinking, one day my boss is just going to magically promote me. I mean, clearly I'm way beyond a project manager at this point. And that didn't happen. I retained that title for 10 years. And the only thing that changed over that time as I was growing is my realization that things weren't just going to magically happen, but it took me a really long time. So 10 years in, we went through a reorg, very common in the tech and telecom world,
Mm-hmm.
and had to reapply for my job. And I was like, huh. So I started looking at all the job postings and realized I was already doing more than the job ahead of me, which was a billing systems manager at the time. So I applied for it. And when I was offered the role, I was offered the role with a 4% pay increase. And that was my very first no. I'm not valuing myself. I'm not being valued. I'm done. So I said, no, thank you. And I walked out of my leader's office. And within about 20 minutes, I was in the CFO's office where she pulled me into a conversation and said, we really expected to have you in this role. You've accomplished some amazing things. You're already leading most of the team. People respect you. Our business partners love you. You can translate tech to non tech pretty
Yeah.
fluidly. What's it going to take to get you to accept this offer? How can we make it more palatable? And I said, well, I'm already doing most of the job. So I would like a senior manager title and I would like a 15% pay increase. And she said, I assume on top of the 4%. And I said, absolutely, yes. But that was the moment where I just realized, like, I have not been valuing myself. I have not been talking about my accomplishments. I'm sitting here in my CFO's office. She's telling me what I've done and what I've achieved and why I'm valuable. I should have been able to tell her that. And that was just a really great light bulb moment for me. So I took what I learned in that moment and started changing my strategy, started creating kind of a blueprint for my own career, setting really solid goals. Surprisingly, 10 months later, we went through another reorg. And we were going from a regional team in California to a division team where I could still sit in California, but I would have employees across 7 states of the division. And there were already 7 directors that were going into 4 director roles, but everybody had to apply. So I said, you know what? I'm done. I'm applying for a director role. And I did. And it was interesting as I was talking to some of the directors who were my friends, and I was hearing they had interviews and how they went, and I hadn't been called yet. So I decided to reach out to the hiring manager. I now know how to advocate for myself. I now know what accomplishments I've achieved. I know I'm respected. So I called and asked her for a conversation and just was curious kind of what's going on with these roles and where do you see me? And she said, well, we've got 7 directors. We're trying to fit into 4 roles. And if we don't find one that's a great fit and we have any roles remaining, we'll be looking at other people who already have director titles. And I thanked her. She was very candid and open. And then I asked her for permission to be candid. And when she said yes, I started sharing with her my actual career journey and the fact that even though my HR record said I was a project manager, I was already doing senior manager work for years. I was ready for that director role, and I was either going to move up, I was going to move over to a different department, or I was going to be leaving the company. So I was in Denver a couple days later interviewing with this panel of 7 for my next job, which I accepted as the director of the West Division for information services. It was kind of amazing. And then I just put that process on repeat, which led to, it was a total of 4 promotions over 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's really kind of where I got into this groove and where I found my passion for it. I've used this framework again and again to help coworkers. I use it with my clients. But there are definitely some things that women overlook when it comes to promotions. And having learned them the hard way, I now take that and help women do it the easy way, kind of straighten that.
Well, first of all, kudos to you, and what an incredible story. Very inspiring. And Tabatha, let's dive in. Let's help those women, because I know also firsthand how it is when you're just sitting and waiting for someone to notice you. And we want to help other women not make the mistakes we have.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like often as women, we are waiting for permission. We're waiting for someone to say, congratulations, here it is. Or, yes, it's okay for you to apply for that job. Or, I think you're ready. So why don't you apply? What we have to do is we have to get more strategic. And that is starting with something as simple as making sure that we're setting a SMART goal. I joke a lot because when we set SMART goals, we usually do it from a business perspective. We're thinking about how do we help our team achieve certain requirements to achieve business objectives. We don't set SMART goals for ourselves. So we don't prioritize it, which means we don't move forward as fast as we should. That is a really big piece of it. I'd say the other is we worry so much about people thinking we're cocky or we're overconfident or just ridiculous because we take credit for our work, which leads us to not taking credit for our work, which it's really tough because I've sat in rooms where I've listened to male counterparts take credit for work when I'm going, wait, I did 70% of that. Like I helped. Wait, where's my name in this?
Yeah.
So learning that, we have to be comfortable and confident in speaking up and taking credit for our role in success.
Yeah. So first I want to recap what you mentioned about goals. I mean, I think I can so much relate to that. You need to be strategic and you need to plan. And when you set goals, I would even say you have to communicate those goals. Like I remember that I wanted to become a director, and I sat with my manager, said, I want to become a director within 6 months. And let's plan how to make it happen. So I already showed that I know what I want, that I'm confident in myself, and I just want to plan how it's going to happen. So I think it's important not just to set goals to yourself, but also to talk about it.
My gosh, talk to anybody who will listen, especially people that will help you stay accountable to your goals. But I love that. And the fact that you said, I want to achieve a director role in 6 months. A lot of people think, well, I don't know if that position is going to be posted in 6 months. You don't. But now you've just given yourself a 6-month runway to get ready and to show people that it's your job when it's available. And then using your calendar to back in then to strategies or to back into actually mini goals along your way, it's so helpful. So for you, your manager knows, so now your manager can support you. You can have conversations with other leaders at your company who can get in and champion for you in conversations. You can take your calendar and back in, 5 months from now, your resume better be ready. You need to be ready to interview. What do you need to be able to do 4 months from now? Who do you need to know? What conversations do you need to have? What do you need to demonstrate? Who do you need to demonstrate it to? You can back into 6 months worth of deliverables for yourself and just start making time to prioritize yourself.
Absolutely. And of course, you cannot guarantee it will happen, but I think that if you communicate like what you want to happen and you talk about it enough, there are very high chances that it will happen, because kind of the mindset of yourself and the people around you is set that, oh, you are going to be a director in 6 months. This is just an example, but it's like people start to kind of think about it also that way.
Exactly. Well, and she's not playing around, right? She's here to succeed. She's going to get what she wants. How can we help her? I don't know about you, but as a former corporate leader, I would ask somebody, what's your goal? What do you want in your career? I don't really know. Well, if you don't know, I can't help you. If you show up to your annual review and I talk about, what is it you need, and you can't tell me what it is for support, I can't really support you. I can obviously still be your leader and help you succeed and help you stay motivated and inspired. But if you don't know that goal and it's not really crystal clear to you that you're going to do whatever it takes to get ready for that, it's really hard for your leader to support you.
Definitely. I mean, you have to know what you want. And if you don't know, go figure it out.
Right?
Sometimes you don't know. I mean, there are a lot of people who are not sure. You're not sure? Trust your instincts. Try. If it doesn't work, try something else. I mean, sometimes, I've seen people that tried things, try to go to leadership, eventually figure out it's not for them, went back to individual contributors. So that's okay too.
Absolutely. There is no clear required path, right? Some people, I've met many people that don't want a promotion. I just want to be happy. I love my job. I want to keep doing this job. My goal is to stay employed in this role and be able to make a difference from this seat. That's absolutely okay. It's in your power, but you've got to take the time to reflect and decide what you want. You might have tried this, but did you think about kind of what's your longer term goal? Where do you want to be in 5 or 10 years?
I It changes over time, and I think that it's good to try to think long term, even if it looks like a dream. If it looks like something unrealistic, it's so powerful. I like to visualize myself as if I'm already there. It's so powerful.
It is so powerful. And that's the thing, right? Once you tell yourself, this is what I want to do. For me at that time, it was my goal is to become a vice president of information services. And then the thing you can do is, in 10 years, that's what I want. Well, how do I back in? Where do I need to be in 5 years to hit that? Where do I need to be in 3 years? Where do I need to be in 1 year? And then you can set your SMART goals that way. And it changed. Obviously, I left and decided to go into career advancement coaching. But at that point, I was very clear, I'm shooting for this vice president role. Okay, what's next? Senior manager makes sense. Okay, director makes sense. Senior director makes sense. Executive director, let's do it. Let's do this, right? Keep going. And then I was like, oh, you know what? I changed my mind. I think I'm going to go and try and work for myself for a little bit and see if I can empower women outside of the company. And you can do that.
Yeah, you can do anything you want. Anything you put your heart into, you can do. That's also what I try to encourage my kids. So definitely.
And our kids never question, can I do that thing? Is that ridiculous? They don't. That's their dream, that's their goal, and they go for it.
Yeah, that's the benefit of having a mom that is a coach.
You're right. True, true.
Yeah, and Tabatha, I want to talk about the self-advocacy, and you mentioned that men feel more comfortable showing off or talking about their achievements, and women less so. And I heard a lot the word like the term bragging. So, what strategies can women take based on your experience to advocate for themselves, but in a way that feels authentic to them?
That is really hitting the nail on the head. It has to feel authentic to you. You can't walk in the room and go,
Yeah,
hello, everybody. I have done blah, blah, blah. And just wait
yeah,
for the applause. It doesn't happen that way. But what you have to do is get out of your own head and stop worrying about what everyone's going to think if you start taking credit for your work. Like I said, I've sat in rooms where I've listened to people take credit for work that I've played a part in. Wait a minute. What about where I did that part too? And, we have to kind of keep score, I say. So when you're having a one-on-one with your leader, you're able to say, here are a couple things I'm really proud of that I've achieved this month. We as women, we are sharers. Like we share the credit for everything. And we say I'm doing it myself right now. We say we a lot.
yeah,
Sometimes you have to say I or me. And she was one of my former employees, then became a client, but I'd helped her with a job interview. She was really excited. She was ready for that next promotion. And I had kind of prepared her. So she was my employee at the time. And the interesting thing was when I asked the hiring manager for feedback, he said, well, I know a lot about her team. I know what her team can do. I know what her team does. I know what her team has achieved. I didn't hear a single thing that she can do. And I thought, oh my gosh, okay, I'm not sure how we missed this. So as I worked with her in the future, when she became a client after I left, we talked about that a lot. I'm like, you've got to keep track. So one of my recommendations is keeping a list. Just anytime you accomplish something big or small, especially if you can put a metric to it, jot it down
yeah.
on a Google sheet or an Excel spreadsheet. And then to practice talking about it, share it with your friends, share it with your team, share it with your peers, and definitely share it with your boss in a one-on-one. So it starts to get more comfortable. If I could be paid $1 every time a woman said, but doesn't that sound cocky or isn't that bragging? I'm like, oh my gosh, I'd be a billionaire. But
Yeah,
it's not. We worry so much about that perception, but you've got to get out and talk about yourself. If you can't do it, nobody can do it for you.
that's for sure. And yeah, I think I also relate more to the one-on-ones. But sometimes what you can do, you can find opportunities to showcase what you have done other ways. It could be For example, sending an email, depending on your role, right? Sending an email to different stakeholders, sharing some things you've done, and maybe asking for feedback, or this is just for FYI, and those are the next steps. It could be asking for feedback from different people, right, around you. So find a way that works for you, and then it, as you said, like it become kind of a habit that you do, and maybe less uncomfortable, I would say. I don't know if it becomes completely comfortable, but less uncomfortable.
Yeah, it doesn't always become uncomfortable. I like the idea of the email or sending out kind of that dashboard report of accomplishments and successes. One thing that I will say is if you're planning to go after a promotion in the future, you're going to have to interview. So I would say don't get too comfortable putting everything in writing. You've got to really practice talking about it. And that's one of the strategies I use with one on one meetings. So making sure that you run your own agenda, if you can, with your leader and saving space in there at least once a month to talk about an accomplishment. It just gets more comfortable the more you do it. So maybe, as a quieter person or quieter leader, you want to start with the email version or the newsletter or however you want to position it. That's good. But then start pushing yourself out of that comfort zone because one day you'll have to interview and you want to be able to say the words that get you promoted.
Absolutely agree with you. And yeah, I wasn't trying to refer that you do either or, but rather that those are other ways, because I think that also it's important for other people to know what you're doing, especially when you are going to higher levels. You need stakeholders to be aware of what you're doing, not just your manager. And you can do that too with one-to-ones, like to meet with different stakeholders, or sometimes when applicable, it's good to maybe share it in a written format. I mean, depending on the situation, obviously, and the company culture.
Absolutely. Just, thinking about kind of going back to a couple of strategies that also work with
Hmm.
stakeholders is scheduling informational interviews, starting to build relationships with those leaders, which then gives you that opportunity as well to maybe follow up on the email or the data that you send out saying, "Hey, did you read this particular bit of information? What are your thoughts? Is there another way you'd like to understand or know about what my team is doing or what I'm doing for this company?" It's just anything you can do to keep visible and advocating for yourself. Women in tech, it can definitely be harder. I'm definitely a little bit of an extrovert. Unless I'm tired, then I'm absolutely not. But, so it's a little easier for me to get in a room and have a conversation about it. For others, the more quieter leaders, the more introverted personalities, it can really feel like a push. So that's where taking any opportunity you can is so important.
Absolutely. And I know that you have a book, Promotion Ready in 3 months, and that you kind of outline some actionable strategies. Anything you would like to highlight, maybe a sneak peek of one or two techniques?
Yeah, I'm actually going to share the book right here. This is what it looks like, and it's available on Amazon. But I cover a lot of strategies in here for such a small book, but everything from setting those smart goals to managing your calendars. Female leaders tend to, and women in general, tend to allow others to overbook their calendars. And you have got to set time each week to work on yourself, to work on preparing for the things that are important and the opportunities where you can stand out. I have one client who we worked with a lot on her calendar because when I first saw it, it was back to back 30-minute meetings from 8 in the morning until about 6ish at night. And I said, "Well, you're meeting with the C suite on Thursday. Where's your preparation time?" "Well, I'm preparing in this meeting for that meeting." I'm like, that's absolutely not the best answer. One, you're not thinking clearly, you're trying to multitask. Two, you look disengaged and disconnected in a meeting where you're better off not attending, maybe send a delegate and get the 10-minute update. So let's bank time for you to prepare so that when you show up, you're showing up strong and confident and well prepared. Same goes for working on your career goals. Having an hour, 30 minutes each week where you're just focused on you is so critical. I also share a lot of strategies for advocating for yourself, including about 100 informational interview questions that you can ask. Because if somebody says, "Well, I got in this room and I really didn't know what I needed or what I wanted to ask. I'm like, well, okay, let's get you some questions so that you're prepared next time. But being so intentional about who you're getting in front of and how you're spending that time is important. And so we cover that strategy all the way through that resume, job interview prep. And I think I even talk a little about salary negotiation because you know how we are so comfortable negotiating for salaries. So
Oh my God. I mean, negotiation is something that is a whole other topic that we feel uncomfortable and we need to get what we deserve. Like you mentioned, right? That you ask for 15% on top of 4% and you got it. So, wow. Any insight on kind of salary negotiation or in general negotiation that you want to highlight here?
couple of things. Yeah, absolutely. So we need to not fear that the job offer is going to be taken away if we negotiate. If it is, that's not the company you want to work for, but I have never heard of that happening. So there's that. Know what you want and be ready to ask for it with confidence. One strategy for salary negotiation, especially, is being able to express the top 3 reasons why you're going to be able to get in that role and make a fast difference. Ask for what you want and then sit in silence. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but I have. I've probably done it back in the day, but it's hilarious. We are so uncomfortable with silence that we will talk ourselves out
Oh,
of it.
yeah.
So I'll come in and ask, yeah, I'd like an extra 15% on top. Here are the top 3 reasons why. And I know I'm going to be a great fit in this role. I can't wait to get started. What's it going to take to make this happen? And then 3 seconds of silence. Well, I understand that that might be a lot to ask. So, how about if we look at that again and say 90 days and see? No, just what's it going to take to make that happen and silence.
Silence. Yeah. Wait. Yeah, I know. I mean, silence is so awkward, right? I mean, but it's so powerful.
It is really powerful. I had a gentleman I worked with last year. I did his resume for him. I did his wife's resume. I did his college age daughter's resume. He ended up getting the job. We had worked a little bit on interview prep. And then about a year later, he sends me an email. Hey, I need to spend another hour with you. I need to practice salary negotiation. This is interesting. So he had applied and been offered another job. And he didn't have the offer quite yet. He knew it was coming. They said, we're going to be calling you tomorrow to talk about the offer. So he knew it was coming. And he said, I don't know how to negotiate. And I said, oh my gosh, I don't hear this a lot from men. So this is fun. And I gave him, my strategies and here's what we do. And then the power of silence. And then I was silent and he immediately started talking. I was like, you can't do it. You're going to have to just. So we practiced. And then my challenge for him that night was with his wife at dinner. I said, so what I want you to do at dinner tonight while you're with your wife is just ask a really random question and then be quiet. Like it can be something so weird that she's got to think about, but do not fill the silence. Make her think and you just be quiet. So the next day he sent me his email update. He said, you're right. The power's in the silence, but man, that was hard.
Yeah, it's hard. And I think also, being relaxed and just sharing whatever you think you deserve and just being very chill about it. Because, a lot of times it's not just what we ask, it's about how. And if you seem kind of uncomfortable, hey, I want, whatever it is, okay, whatever. And I sound kind of not sure. Yeah, I think I want 100K or something. Like if I say it like in a way that doesn't sound like I'm really confident, obviously they are going to realize that I don't think that I may get it.
You may get an immediate no. They may not even say, we're going to go work on it because
Yeah.
they know you're going to accept the job. Yeah, it's so funny. And so often, too, we are so excited and so grateful. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I can't wait to start. And I'm like, wait, you just passed your negotiation window. What happened? You have to be able to be really calm when that offer comes. And to your point, and those sentences with a period, not a question mark. I'd
Yes.
like 100,000. What's it going to take to make that happen?
And it takes practice, as you mentioned.
Absolutely. I have a good friend who's a recruiter and she sees it all the time. She said a male, when she asks salary requirements, even at the beginning, men will come in and say, I expect 175,000, which is almost always 10,000 over the top limit of the job. A woman will come in and go somewhere toward the bottom. Well, so say the range is 100 to 175. well, 110 is good, but I could take 100. I'm like, they do what? And she said, yeah. And there's always hesitation.
Yeah.
So it is very common. I'm sure it doesn't happen 100% of the time, but it is very common. So we have to support each other and getting better at negotiating our value.
Yeah, practice if you need to. I mean, sometimes I recommend to women to actually interview for jobs that they are not super keen on, just for the sake of practice, not just the interview process, but also like the negotiation. Because a lot of times, if you are not afraid of losing the opportunity, then you'll feel more comfortable.
Yeah, it does make a huge difference. There's just a different way that you carry yourself when you are not all in than it is when you're just like, oh my gosh, my life is depending on this. And the interviewer picks up on that energy.
Sure. Wow. Trying to see what else we can talk about in the few minutes we have left. Anything on top of your mind that you want to share?
I'd say one of the things you said earlier is about, people kind of transitioning into a leadership role and then finding out they're happier as an individual contributor. One of the ways or one of the things to think about is really your why and what do you love doing? I've known people that have felt pressured to apply for a promotion they didn't really want. I have known people who are incredible at code. I've had one lady that worked for me that could pick up a book and learn any programming language. It was mind blowing to me. I'm like, how does she do that? And she's never had the desire to really lead people. She just always wants to be challenged and be given the more complicated tasks. And that's absolutely okay. So, again, I talk a lot about promotions, but sometimes promotion is maybe you're really happy in that same role and you just want to continue to grow. So I think I got there the long way, but really just kind of knowing what you want and why. Why do you love doing this? And is it really what's going to light your fire every day? Because you want to make sure that you're happy in your career. It's such a big part of our lives.
Sure. Yeah. And I think you don't need to apologize for wanting something else that maybe others expect from you. Just be at peace with who you are and what you want.
Absolutely. I'll tell you, there's just so many times when I've had people say, you lead technical teams? I thought you were in HR. HR does not want me. I love the geeking out stuff. I love listening to people talk about it. Do I want to go and necessarily write a code? I don't. But I think it's so interesting. And then being able to, for me, my superpower was being able to take layman's terms to the technical team. Here's my idea. Here's the vision. Here's what I'm thinking that we can do to elevate the business. Then having the brain trust come in and say, oh my gosh, what if we did this and this and this and this? Getting it done and then being able to go back to the C suite and say, here's what happened. We all have different superpowers and we just need to really lean into them. But in doing that, make sure that you are valued, make sure you are valuing yourself, and make sure that you take the time to understand that value that you bring so that you can talk about it when it really matters.
Absolutely. And that's a wonderful way to end the episode. Thank you so much, Tabatha. And before we end, just let our audience know how they can find you, and I'll make sure to put all the links there.
Perfect. Thank you. The easiest way to find me is on LinkedIn. I tend to spend a bit of time there. I'm Tabatha, Tabatha Jones. I actually have a free promotion readiness assessment that you can access directly from my profile and would love to chat with anyone who's interested in moving their careers forward.
Wonderful. I'll make sure to post that. And thank you so much, Tabatha, for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Wow. What an incredible conversation with Tabatha. And I'd love to hear what resonated with you the most. So don't forget to message me either on LinkedIn or drop a comment on social media or on YouTube. Your feedback is what keeps this podcast growing, and I want to make sure that I bring you the guests that resonate with you and the topics that will help you. And if you found this episode valuable, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an inspiring conversation like this one. And hey, if you know someone who could benefit from what we talked about today, take a moment to share this episode with them. Before you go, I want to give you a sneak peek of next week. Next week, I have a truly special guest. Her name is Serena Diamond, And after 30 years in corporate America, Serena found herself unexpectedly in transition. But, instead of letting that moment define her, she embraced the power of end, A-N-D, the power of end. And this is a mindset shift that changed everything for her. Because, what is your next step wasn't either or, but instead an end. What if your career could be multi-directional, full of opportunities you never considered? And this is something I wish I, thought about sooner. Now I absolutely embrace the power of end. But when I was in my career, I always thought, oh, there's only one way to go up. I was an engineer, a manager, a director. I mean, there was only one way. It was so much limiting. And in this episode, Serena shares her powerful journey from corporate leadership to entrepreneurship, and how a simple question, like the power of end, right? How a simple question from a mentor shifted her entire perspective, and why she is now dedicated to helping women step into their confidence and create their own path forward. So I want to invite you to stay tuned, subscribe to this podcast, and I'll see you next week for an episode you don't want to miss. Thank you so much for being here today, and I want to wish you a wonderful day.